That's how you're going to understand if it's helping or hurting you, because there's so much to be said about just...
Welcome to Rebel Wellness, the go-to podcast for realigning and revitalizing your health and well-being. I'm your host, Kailes, also known as Coach Kailes. I'm a holistic health educator, certified nutritionist, and fitness professional of nearly a decade. I'm stoked to have you with us. You just joined a community of amazing souls who are ready to break free from the confines of the often outdated and confusing health advice all around us. Living in a world overwhelmed by quick fix diets and unrealistic body standards, us rebels stand for change. If you're like me, you're exhausted with the confusion and polarization plaguing the social media health scene. My mission is to empower you to step beyond today's diet culture, adopting a holistic health approach paired with the foundations of science for lasting, well-rounded wellness. Through teaching you how to tune in and embrace your mind, body, and soul, we'll reject one-size-fits-all solutions, realigning you on a better path that honors your unique needs and values. With new episodes weekly, this podcast is your sanctuary for deep wellness exploration, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and a true commitment to your growth. Your journey to better health and simplicity in life begins now. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to the show, Rebels. Today is a to-the-point kind of chat about a very common discussion lately surrounding all the research behind your morning cup of coffee that could be sabotaging your cortisol and therefore your hormones and could be causing your fat gain or whatever. There's been a lot of different ways people have approached this study that recently came out, maybe about a half a year ago or so. And there's been a lot of conflicting conversations on the coffee topic and caffeine in general. But generally, a lot of us drift towards coffee when we are looking for our morning caffeine or energy any time of the day. You know what I mean? And so I really wanted to talk about this today because I have seen both sides of the conversation in general. And throughout my entire career, I've honestly really tried to discover and dive into what is the truth behind coffee, or caffeine? Is it actually worse than I've been led to believe? Or is it good? And every time I deep dive into the research, there's tons of literature on both sides, So that's where I've kind of landed in my approach today that I'm going to be talking about. It is a little bit of a combination of the kind of research-based as well as field experience and what I've actually seen happen for other people, for myself, and all of that. Because I think that it's really important for you to kind of take everything we talk about today and just apply it to your own coffee habit or how you approach coffee, because it is really going to be an individual situation. And so I really find that understanding the reasons why coffee could be negative for you and taking that and looking at how your own body reacts and such, and then also pairing it with some of my best tips that I'm going to give you towards the end of this episode of how to pick the best coffee for your health, and also my best recommendations for how you can quote unquote hack your coffee timing to really get the best effect that will support you, and your health journey all together. Real quick, if you're new to the podcast, welcome to Rebel Wellness. This is my outlet for kind of talking and diving deeper into really big health conversations, everything from nutrition to fitness to mindset and lifestyle. And I love to talk about stuff, especially similar to today's topic, where there can be a lot of conflicting conversations, a lot of polarization. And so I hope to bring my perspectives and do the research for you, so to speak, so that you can kind of get a more well-rounded understanding of a lot of the hot topics of today. And if you haven't already, come join our community on @Rebel Wellness Podcast on Instagram, or my primary page @Kailes Loren on Instagram. And I'd also love to invite you to come join our monthly wellness newsletter. It's jam-packed with all the goods of wellness, fitness, a huge variety of curated wellness resources for you. Everything from mindset journal prompts to top clean beauty picks and really insightful pro tips on other hot topics going on in the moment. I recently had one come out about the Ozempic craze that's been going on, as well as a blog post. So you can head to coachkailes.com to join that newsletter if you would like to join. And you can also just check out my wellness blog on there if some of those topics sounded interesting to you, because there is an archive of everything that I share in the newsletter through the blogs and whatnot on my page. And that's going to be the easiest way for you to find it. Also, more specifically to this conversation today, if you haven't already, on my website, I do have an Amazon top list of things that I use that are like my wellness favorites, as well as recommendations. And why I mention that is because actually several of the coffees that I top recommend you consider swapping to are listed on that list. So I will also add as many things as I can to the show notes. Not everything fits all the time. So if that is not in the show notes, go ahead and run over to coachkailes.com and you can check out my Amazon recommendations there. I have it partitioned out into fitness and wellness, and then other little health hack section where are my favorite like little gadgets, because I'm such a gadget person. I love the things that make accessing health a lot more simple, because simplicity is key, right? Crazy world like today, especially for a recovering workaholic like me. All right, so whether you're sipping on some coffee right now, or having some tea, or doing something herbal, or drinking some water, or your electrolytes, I always love it if you're drinking some electrolytes, as my clients listening will know. Let's go ahead and slide into the topic for today and get learned. As always, let's address the science first, of course, because like most things, you can always have too much of a good thing. So if you're somebody who drinks coffee like all day long or all morning long into the afternoon, and a large volume of it, I would say no matter what, that's not going to be health promotive. Even if you are going to be drinking a better quality coffee type, that's still going to be too much. We're going to talk a little bit more about why and like what exactly does that mean to have too much. But I just want to start off with saying that it's really important to know that 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day is a standard healthy dose, because a cup of coffee can be anywhere from 55 to 95 milligrams of caffeine for a standard 8 ounce or so, depends on the roast and the way it's processed and all that jazz. But you do want to know that we are kind of aiming for being in that under 300 milligrams of caffeine zone when you're going to use caffeine in your day. There's a lot of things that are overdosed with caffeine nowadays. Our thresholds for caffeine have definitely gotten higher because with science and technology, companies are able to extract caffeine from like green coffee bean or green tea or any of these different commonly caffeinated natural sources and pack them into an energy drink. And an energy drink can be anywhere from 250 to 500 milligrams of caffeine, which is a lot, almost too much. And you definitely can get a lot of negative health effects just simply from that sheer volume, not to mention all the weird stuff they pack into like energy drinks. But I'm not going to really go into that too much today, especially like other caffeine drinks. We're specifically going to just talk about coffee. When we're thinking of the 2 most major aspects that tend to make coffee less health supportive, it's always going to be the quality of the coffee and like your additives, like your cream and sugar or whatever, as well as how it individually impacts your cortisol. So what exactly is cortisol? To keep it simple, cortisol is a steroid hormone that is produced by your 2 adrenal glands that sit on top of each of your kidneys. And when you are stressed, increased cortisol is released into your bloodstream from your adrenal glands and helps to rebalance what is getting stimulated with your stress response to whatever is stressing you out. And it's a very important hormone because it's how your body can respond to stress and danger. It balances a lot of your insulin, so your blood sugars and such, to create energy in moments of high stress. And it also controls your blood pressure, reduces inflammation where necessary, and is upstream from a lot of other systems in your body. So it is extremely important that we have cortisol. So cortisol is not innately bad. I know most of the time when we hear it in our day-to-day, people just assume like, oh, cortisol is bad for me. I need to reduce my cortisol. Only if you're somebody who is chronically stressed. Cortisol is extremely important. It's something that we need, especially in acute moments where we need to act fast or move out of the way or handle some sort of task that needs your attention immediately. But when you're in that state chronically, like every day for long periods of time, you're not actually getting any of that rest and digest or dropping into your more like parasympathetic nervous system, we tend to get too much cortisol, and that would relate to adrenal fatigue, which I personally, friends, I do personally struggle with adrenal fatigue syndrome. And some of you have heard it if you've listened to some of my other podcasts, but it is a thing that I am actively working on healing. But if I could give you any advice, it would definitely be do not listen to your body's whispers for help before they become screams. I preach this all the time. And sometimes because our society is really disconnected with ourselves, especially because the concept of how the workflow is in such a high stress, high demand state. It's actually more than a human should really ever be doing. You know, you go to Italy and leisure is a birthright. It's not a privilege. You know, that concept is completely foreign here. Like you listening right now might be like, oh my God, I could never. Like leisure is such a luxury. And it really shouldn't be, you know, that's just exactly how we've been trained and conditioned to just not take care of ourselves, that it's lazy and this or that. And females need actually a lot more recovery and a lot more rest, especially than our male counterparts because of our different hormones, the different way we cycle naturally, if you are somebody who cycles naturally. And it is actually, you know, it's unhealthy and unnatural to not be cycling naturally for a large period of your pre-menopausal ages. So those of us who have been chronically on birth control, that is not good. We are muting our natural ovulation. Just because you bleed, it's a ghost period. It's not an actual ovulation period because the birth control pill pauses and stops ovulation. That's how it works. So unfortunately, that wreaks havoc on our body, on our liver, on so many systems, including our adrenal glands, including our cortisol. So that's a little quick female hormone background around cortisol and why it's really important for us to take care of our adrenal glands in relation to cortisol because they manage so much in our body and we really shouldn't be taking them for granted. You know, unfortunately, I did, but I didn't know as much now or then as I do now. And so that's why it is definitely part of my mission to help spread the education and personally work through how to approach and heal that. But that's a conversation for another time. The thing that is important to understand when in relation to cortisol and coffee is that coffee can be one of the major ways that your body spikes cortisol when you have it, especially in your waking hours. So naturally, your cortisol peaks around for your circadian rhythm, which is a 24-hour rhythm, between 8 and 9 a.m. on average. That's the average time. It depends on like how you've trained your circadian rhythm. And so naturally, it's peaking at that time to wake you up so that you're like good to go, supposed to be. So when you are drinking caffeine at a time immediately when you wake up, when your cortisol is already peaked, it's the highest point it should ever be all day long. You are kind of approaching your maximal level of alertness naturally paired with a cortisol spike on top of that from the caffeine from your coffee potentially. So like I described before, that is a problem for those of us who live in a kind of more chronically stressed life because we already have too much cortisol production daily. And it's going to inevitably become an issue for our internal ecosystem, the balance of everything going on inside, because it will be attacking our adrenal glands of having our cortisol just way too high and way too high for too long. So coffee, because the caffeine in coffee stimulates cortisol naturally, that can become problematic. So you understand that whole equation there from the way that I described it. But when we consume low quality coffee with high caffeine amounts, because there's a lot of coffee that has been, you know, the beans that say like max caffeine or extra jolt or some junk, you know what I mean? That's even worse because it'll be an even higher amount of caffeine per cup. and then you're going to get all jittery or something like that. And while we might think that that's kind of funny or exciting to experience, it's actually not a good sign for our body. And especially for those, because there is a genetic component to how you metabolize caffeine. And for those that get heart palpitations or jittery or flushed face, you don't process caffeine very well. And that can absolutely be just a genetic quality. And or you are somebody who's been having too much caffeine too consistently, and especially first thing in the morning, or just too much all day long. And that would be also a reason why you might have lost your tolerance to caffeine. A lot of people think that maybe you should just be having more caffeine to build a tolerance. That's the standard way that we approach tolerance. But especially if you have a genetic component, that actually can be not correct. That could be the not a right way to think about caffeine, because you can actually also just impair your sensitivity to caffeine by having too much of it too frequently for too long as well, which is kind of a little bit of an issue, right? Because you might think like, oh, I'm just going to try to build my tolerance, or people say my tolerance has gone down, and it can be true for sure. For some people, like you can gain or lose tolerance to caffeine, but it's very important for you to kind of observe for yourself how your body reacts, how your family, like your parents, how they react to caffeine, and just become really aware of it and mindful. And that can help you better understand, do you maybe have a genetic component that makes you actually less good at processing caffeine in your body? But what we often see is if you spike your cortisol really high in the morning, so let's say you wake up and you have your natural cortisol spike that wakes you up, and then you pair on it a cup or two, like 200 milligrams or so of caffeine, and you get an even higher spike, there's a really strong chance that because your body's adrenal glands are trying to counter how much cortisol is spiked in your body, they will get to a point where they get so fatigued that they just drop out. And this is actually where 2 years ago when I first did my first saliva hormone testing, and saliva is hands down the best way to test your cortisol because it needs to be active real-time cortisol understanding, which means you need to take a saliva sample in the morning, in the afternoon, dinner, and then at night, because that's going to give you a big picture of what is the pattern of your cortisol all day long, because it's not consistent. So like blood serum cortisol is actually not an accurate way to test that. You need it out of your saliva. So if you're somebody who's been struggling with adrenal fatigue, or you think you do, like for me, what prompted it was I was yawning at like anywhere from noon to 2. I wanted to go take a nap, but like I'm also so wired and tired I can't nap. That was a huge sign to me that like, hey, maybe you should go get your stress and your cortisol tested. And that's where I actually first came upon Your Hormone Balance. The ladies, it's a female-owned business that is just direct to your house. And I use them for my hormone testing all the time, especially being outside of insurance. And it's a really affordable and very accurate testing, and it's secure here in the US. They test in Oregon, and they do a really great job of making it super accessible and a lot of great resources for you guys. They've increased their resources like tenfold from the first time that I did their test to now. So if you want to get your cortisol tested, I would highly recommend yourhormonebalance.com. You can see my show notes. And there's actually also now a discount code for you, Rebel Wellness 15, I believe, for 15% off. And that code still works if you do payment plans. Just kind of ignore how it goes through on the system. I know it can be a little bit confusing for some people. They think that they lost the discount if they select a payment plan, but it still has it in there. It just, the interface they use changes the pricing and it just looks confusing. But if you do the math, you can see that it still has the discount. I just wanted to put a disclaimer in there because I've had several clients and friends utilize the service and have a little bit of complications using the discount code. So I would highly recommend that. That has nothing really to do with this, like, I didn't put that in there because I'm an affiliate. I actually asked to be an affiliate because I actually really think that this service is highly valuable to the women who actually care about understanding their health and want to be actionable about it. Not the ones who are sleeping at the wheel or hiding behind the door being like, I don't want to look in, I don't want to see. You got to find out, babe. Like, you need to go and take care of yourself and be actionable. And it's just your hormones. Okay. You're just getting your hormones tested through your spit. It's really simple. It's not painful at all. You're not getting your blood drawn or anything like that. So highly recommend it. Okay, so when we talk about having a adrenal fatigue situation like that, or maybe you don't even have specifically that, you just deal with a lot of energy spikes and crashes. And so maybe you're somebody who has multiple cups of coffee because you keep spiking and crashing. Let's talk about how to be strategic then about the best time for the people who have an average workday or an average life day to consume coffee. So it's important from the scientific side to know that although your cortisol levels peak between 8 and 9 a.m., there are a few other times where on average blood levels peak again with your cortisol, and that's between noon and 1. So again, like going back to that, seeing that my cortisol was not peaking again after taking a steep dive was a sign that my adrenals were fatigued. They were like, I'm out. I tried for half the day. Here we go. But for the average person, if it does peak again between that noon to 1, where it should be kind of like slowly tapering off, you will also kind of get another peak of cortisol around that 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. So kind of honestly, if you realize those timelines, you're getting cortisol peaks around the time that you eat meals, if you're a 3-meal-a-day person. And that's ideal to follow with your meals because it can be really beneficial for you to take that extra energy and fuel yourself with actual literal food energy at the same time, because it's kind of matching a natural pattern of what your metabolism probably wants. So in the morning, if you want to optimize how to avoid sabotaging that initial cortisol spike, which most people probably have between 7 and 9 a.m., you will be the most effective to have your coffee between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. Ideally, even better would be just 10 a.m. So a lot of people have been saying that kind of the best time to have your coffee is more around 10 a.m. or 10:30 a.m. because that's when your cortisol levels are starting to drop. And it's right before the next spike. So you can benefit from energy boosting and lasting energy effects when you have your coffee closer to that 10 a.m. later morning time. And this will kind of allow you to feel energetic straight through your afternoon without needing a secondary boost. So it actually might naturally become 1 cup of coffee is good for you because you have your natural morning energy, you get that coffee boost, and then you're good to go for the rest of the evening. Because we really should not be having coffee or highly caffeinated beverages after 2 p.m. as adults anyways. If you're somebody who's under the age of, let's say, like 25, and you still are having coffee kind of later in the afternoon, I would say that used to be me. I used to think that I could like not get affected by caffeine ever because I used to not be able to, but now I do. You want to consider training yourself to stop having caffeine by at least latest 3 p.m. Unless you, for some reason out of the normal, need that spike for a presentation or something at work or, a project or whatever it is. But for all of us above the age 25, we really should be cutting off our coffee consumption and our high caffeine beverage consumption around 2 p.m. latest, okay? You're going to sabotage the rest of your sleep cycle, and bad sleep at night will ruin your health over a long term, no matter what. As many of you know from my Fat Loss Foundations episode, or if you don't know, you should definitely check that one out. But poor sleep is just going to crash the entire house that you're trying to build on, metaphorically speaking. So for some of you, like me, you might find yourself thinking that like, hey, but I like my little morning ritual, this or that. Herbal teas can be great for that, or I'll one you better. Creating a new ritual of making what's considered an adrenal cocktail can be really beneficial for you, because if you're somebody who's waking up and is still feeling tired, you have an adrenal dysregulation issue. There's something wrong. You should be waking up and feeling good. If it's something to do with the fact that you stayed up late scrolling, or maybe you have a baby, or, work was stressing you out and you were up too late, like those are all other things and factors that should be addressed individually, because obviously those are also going to impact that. However, regardless, it's going to be really helpful for you to not overdo it with your caffeine and overload your adrenals with your cortisol, because you're still waking up feeling not awake and energized and ready to go. So an adrenal cocktail, essentially what it is simply something that is rich in vitamin C, well balanced with electrolytes, and it can be something that's as simple as orange juice, coconut water, and sea salt, because coconut water is a natural source of potassium, magnesium, sodium through, which are your electrolytes, if you didn't know already. And sea salt, of course, is sodium. And so you want to replenish that. Orange juice with vitamin C. Vitamin C is really beneficial for a multitude of systems in your body, but it also helps to wake you up and kind of start your immune system and get your metabolism going. So we call those adrenal cocktails. There's nothing really all that fancy about it. Essentially, what you can just have as well is an electrolyte beverage. So if you can just mix in, and I'm not talking about Gatorade or any of that junk. I really recommend, again, like I talked about in the beginning, I have some of my favorite electrolyte recommendations from Amazon on my coachkailes.com. But it's important to know that like companies like Redmond Relight and Nuun, the Nuun, as well as several other companies have been coming out with better quality electrolyte powders that taste good. You know what I mean? Redmond Relight has the most flavor variety I've ever seen. They are made with really good quality balanced minerals from a man who is the mineral master, Dr. James DiNicolantano. I can never say his name right. But anyways, you want to have those types of balanced minerals, not like Liquid IV or any of that junk, because it is going to help your system be replenished and help your water balance in your body through your kidneys to be proper. A lot of the time is the biggest mistake I have seen across the board. And it's totally not anyone's fault. We're just not educated at a like general level on this, which is frustrating. Athletes are educated on it because athletes are more like obviously sweating, but every day-to-day human is sweating too. And we're sweating at like micro levels also just for keeping our temperature regulated. So you really need to take care of your kidneys when you're drinking water. And most of our water, especially here in the US, because it's mass produced for a bunch of people living in places that don't necessarily all have well water access and things like that, and clean water access, it's all purified, meaning all the minerals and everything are taken out of it. And that's why a lot of people, when they drink like mineral water, they're like, ew, this tastes gross. It's because we've been trained on water that tastes like nothing, that has nothing in it. And that's not good. That's bad for us. That's bad for our health. We need a lot of magnesium. Almost every American is magnesium deficient from the jump. So I always recommend a magnesium supplement. However, you want to also make sure that you're mixing a good electrolyte powder in the morning, ideally, with a good amount of magnesium, like some potassium, a very good amount of sodium. You know, sodium is not the demon that it's been made out to be. I drink electrolyte powders all the time, all day, every day. I well salt my food with sea salt at home because I mostly cook at home. And if you cook dominantly at home, or 2 of your 3 meals at home, or they're not packaged meals, you are not getting enough sodium. And I have to explain this to a lot of people because unfortunately, a lot of common narratives in our world right now are like, be afraid of sodium, blah, blah, blah. That's for people who eat a lot of processed food, who eat out and get a lot of fast food and are consuming a lot of like iodized salt and low quality salt, because it doesn't taste as salty as its sodium content. Not all salt is high or has the same amount of sodium content. So sea salt, for example, tastes very salty, but it actually does not have as much sodium involved. So you can well salt your veggies and proteins and whatever and actually not be having that much sodium. So it leaves a lot of sodium available through your beverages and such throughout the day that you need to get in, because you need enough sodium to have balanced a water balance that is ample, as well as potassium. Potassium is extremely important, as well as magnesium. So that was your little schooling on electrolytes, but an adrenal cocktail is essentially electrolytes with some more vitamin C involved. So you could take any vitamin C rich like juice of sorts, like a natural juice, you know, not something that's too sugary, and combine about, I think the usual ratios might be like 3 ounces to 6 ounces, and have a little bit of that in the morning as a ritual instead of your coffee. And you might actually find your body feels like really energized and hydrated when you do that instead of jumping right into coffee. So 10 out of 10, I highly recommend you do that. I've been doing that the last couple of years, not entirely the orange juice variation. I've done that a few times when I've had like fresh local orange juice that's been pressed in the fridge. I don't keep juice in my fridge very much at all, but that is something that I find to be really beneficial and feel really good and be a nice little replacement ritual for those of you who are looking for that. Or additionally, you can put in a 15 to 20 minute morning walk, getting sunshine in your face is so important for all your hormone production and balance and like melatonin, things that really benefit your health in the long run. So making a habit of a morning walk or being out on your porch with the sun in your face or your backyard or wherever is really key. You can also get in a little micro workout. You can follow something that's short on YouTube, or if you have access to somebody who has made you a micro workout. I'm thinking of making a little micro workout freebie. So check out coachkailes.com in the future if you want to see if I have that live. I haven't made it live yet, but I will let you know when it is on future podcasts. Or just pop in a little yoga session and get a little bit of sun salutation, do some flows. Moving your body, always going to be the best way to naturally boost your energy, your focus, having a lasting effect on your mood and your metabolism every day. So replacing your morning coffee ritual with some movement, some sunshine, and an adrenal cocktail, quote unquote, or an electrolyte rich beverage is going to be way, way, way more beneficial to you than jumping right into your usual coffee, especially if you're somebody who puts like creamer or some junk in it too. You know what I mean? Okay, so as I promised, let's transition now into how to choose quality coffee, because making a shift to a coffee that is more health promotive, especially if you're somebody who drinks it weekly, daily, if you're somebody who has it every day, you're having a lot over time. You're having a consistent, it's almost like taking a daily supplement at that point, right? So investing in and making sure you're providing your body with good quality coffee makes a huge difference. And I'm going to tell you why in a moment. But especially when it's sourced, harvested, and roasted properly, it can literally be one of the most mineral rich, pro-metabolic beverages of anything you could drink that is natural, that is. So let's talk a little bit about how you can become a smart shopper for some quality, clean coffee. And this little checklist is one that I would recommend either you write it down or you just really pause or rewind and listen to multiple times before you go shopping for your coffee. So first question, I know it's annoying and some people are probably like, okay, this is obvious, but organic. We want to avoid as many of the pesticides that are sprayed openly on cheaper beans. So like Folgers, Green Mountain Coffee, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Nestle, any of those are going to be, unfortunately, highly pesticide-ridden, cheaper beans. That's why the coffee is cheap. If you're somebody who is constantly utilizing Keurig, I would definitely look to one of these other brands that I would recommend you replace. I'll tell you those brands in a moment, but some of them actually have pods that are in a more natural casing, so you're not getting your coffee ran through plastic to reduce your microplastics, because that's a big issue. I have an episode on microplastics if you are interested to learn on that. But at the same time, you're also going to be getting a higher quality coffee with a coffee bean that is much cleaner from the highly glyphosate sprayed beans that we typically will get, because like Nestle, for example, is all sourced from China. China does not really care about what the soil is like, what they grow in, as well as what they spray on the beans. So unfortunately, yeah, it could taste good and it can be cheap, but at what expense? And it's usually your health that's at the expense. The other thing you want to look into is it mycotoxin free, meaning is it mold free? Because there's actually a lot of coffee, especially like from the sources rather, that I just spoke about, where they also don't care if their coffee beans get moldy. And mold is extremely insidious in the body. And if you are cooking your coffee and drinking down little mold spores and it's getting into your gut, that is a huge issue, because mold can really thrive and live very happy lives in our guts and wreak havoc on our health. I've seen it many times before, and coffee is a sneaky little area where it can often creep into your life and you may not even realize it. So we want to make sure that it is specifically stated in the company's sourcing and their production that their coffee is tested and made sure that it's mold free. And the last thing that I usually like to look for is it low acid, because there can be really high acid content in a lot of coffees, especially, again, the cheaper coffees and such. That can cause problems for people's gut health, especially if you're somebody who struggles with acid reflux or a variety of other inflammatory issues in your gut as well, IBS, etc. So making sure that you're drinking a more low acid coffee can help counter those issues. And the last most interesting thing, as far as this quality clean coffee checklist goes, is you want to actually stick to dark roasts, or at least medium, because the roasting length brings the levels of a chemical called acrylamide down significantly, because the longer the roast, the darker the beans, essentially. So that's why we aim for dark roast, but medium roast is okay because that's closer to dark roast. But if you want to have the least amount of acrylamide in your coffee, you're going to want to go for dark roast. So what exactly is acrylamide? Just for short kind of little interjection there. It's a food, it's acrylamide is in food, and it is a byproduct of what is called the Maillard reaction. And this reaction occurs when sugars and amino acids in food products are heated above 248 degrees or 120 degrees Celsius, wherever you're listening. And when coffee beans are roasted, acrylamide is formed. So when you have better quality sourced coffee as well as darker roasted beans, that is the lowest amount of naturally occurring acrylamide that happens with the roasting process, because we get exposure to acrylamide in a lot of different areas. We get it from secondhand smokers, or if you are a smoker, you get it from your cigarettes when you're burning your tobacco, and you get it in other food products or plastic products that it leaches out of those foods when you heat the plastic up and things like that. So, and acrylamide is linked to cancers and other diseases, as we know that it's carcinogenic. So if you've ever seen the proposition warning when you're in California at Starbucks, that's a little sign that they have to put whenever you are picking up your coffee. It warns you that it has chemicals that are known to cause cancer and stuff in it, because California has a proposition where you have to be explicit about exposure to carcinogens. And that is one of the major products that is in coffee at Starbucks, especially because, again, Starbucks is a cheaper bean, cheaper quality coffee. There are no health benefits to Starbucks coffee, unfortunately. So it's because of the acrylamide that's in there and a few other components that I'm not going to go into right now, but that's just some interesting fun facts. So if you want to avoid as much of that chemical as possible, you want to stick towards your dark roasts. So like I was saying before, some of the top recommendation brands for coffee, I was going to circle back to that. So we are here. This category of cleaner coffees would be companies like Lifeproof, Fabula, Magni, or if you would like to support a small business here in the US that is women-owned and very craftfully sourced, and honestly better priced than some of the other ones that I listed above, would be a company called Wild and Well Fed. You can search that on Google and it should come up. Just look up Wild + Well Fed coffee. And I'll also link it in the show notes so that's a little bit easier for you to access. But all of those are going to fit every single category that I stated. And again, yes, you may balk at the pricing of it. I would say cleaner coffee usually ranges anywhere from $20 to $35 a bag. And if you're somebody who drinks it consistently, then you might as well sign up for a subscription service, which is going to greatly reduce the cost, as well as Fabula, for example. I order Fabula quite often. I've switched a little bit more towards Lifeproof now because I like the taste of their coffee a little bit better. But Fabula always runs some big deals where they have buy 4 and it cuts the price down $10 to $15 a bag, which is a great deal. So I would just be crafty about when you purchase or how you purchase. If you know that you are going to be drinking this coffee consistently, if you are somebody who's just this is a huge thing that I'd have to budget for now or something like that. But in reality, when you think about getting a Starbucks Starbucks now. Like if you can find me a Starbucks that's less than $3.50 that you have daily, I'd be really impressed, because I would say on average, most Starbucks coffees, when it's all is said and done, is usually about $5, right? $5 a Starbucks. And so if you have, 7 coffees in a week or in 2 weeks, that's one bag of the coffee beans. And the bag of coffee beans will provide you with an entire month of coffee. You know what I mean? So just kind of remembering that there are trade-offs, of course, but when you're trying to optimize your health and take better care of yourself and your internal ecosystem, you really want to consider these things as being valuable, because they absolutely are. Also, let's really quick talk about what is beneficial to consume clean coffee, because I started off this conversation telling you a little bit about why it can be bad to have coffee first thing in the morning, the conversation that's been going on more in the social media space. But the alternate side that is important to understand is when you're consuming clean coffee, there are so many benefits for your health that can come from that as well. So one of coffee's many benefits is its high nutrient profile. It has a lot of riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, niacin, which is vitamin B3, magnesium, potassium, and various antioxidants, which are very, obviously antioxidative, which helps your health overall. And this is where, like, you may have heard in the past, like Greek coffee, there was a little bit of time in the health world, probably like I would say circa 2014 or so, where Greek coffee became a very big thing on the scene, because you get a lot more antioxidants from Greek coffee's preparation, because it grinds the beans really fine, again, where the beans are sourced, and then how you cook the coffee, and you're actually drinking some of the bean byproduct because you don't filter it out with Greek coffee. So I used to actually drink it quite a bit when I was in my early health craze zone, when I was starting to really get into it in my early college years, because of the antioxidant thing, because it was also like one of those things listed in the blue zones that was really important to consider incorporating, because in Greece, they have a blue zone, and a lot of people kind of attributed some of their life longevity to the Greek coffee. But I don't know how much of that is like actually that substantial. But again, if you drink that every single morning, it's a medicine. You're having it every day. It's like a supplement, you know what I mean? So it's going to affect you positively or negatively because you're having it that consistently. And the other thing that is really beneficial for clean coffee would be like thyroid and metabolic support. And your thyroid is essentially your metabolism. It's in your throat. It's a little bit butterfly-shaped gland, and it is so important. And we are finding that our thyroids are getting attacked for lifestyle factors, chemicals, a whole lot of different reasons, stress, chronic stress, like I was talking about before. And it can cause your thyroid to not be working properly. And then that'll just wreak havoc on your metabolism. So a lot of these different B vitamins and such, as well as like thiamine, is really crucial as a cofactor for several enzymes that are involved in the conversion of carbohydrates into energy, aka glycolysis, and the Krebs cycle, which is energy. So it plays a role in a lot of the functions of your mitochondria and a lot of different cellular structures responsible for your energy production. So when you get disruptions in your levels of thiamine or, your B vitamins and all of these other minerals and vitamins that are metabolic precursors to a lot of these processes, you can potentially affect all of your energy levels and cellular function over time. And this is potentially what can be leading towards thyroid dysfunction. So you want to have those nutrients amply in your system to support your thyroid and to support your metabolism as a downstream effect. And coffee, especially clean coffee particularly, has a lot of those nutrients in it, which is amazing. So it's kind of like you're getting some vitamins and minerals from something you drink versus just taking supplements and eating specific foods, right? And the last thing that's really notable about coffee that is cool is that it stimulates your metabolism, not just from your thyroid, but specifically because it stimulates your brown fat. And if you didn't really know ahead of time, your body has brown fat and white fat. Most of what we see and what we poke and all that stuff that's on our body is white fat, but brown fat is the most metabolically active fat in your body, and it is very thermogenic. So it increases the production of heat in your body. And this then contributes to the increase of your metabolic rate. So it helps you stimulate your metabolism, burn more calories, all that kind of stuff. And so coffee has a really good thermic effect, we call it, because of the way that the caffeine and the nutrients in clean coffee stimulate your brown fat and your energy in general. And that's also often why we can have a nice bowel movement after coffee in the morning. A lot of you may think that it's just because it's a diuretic or whatever. That's what people say. Coffee only becomes a diuretic when you consume over 200 milligrams of caffeine. So that would be like 2 cups of coffee. Once you go into your third, now it is diuretic. It is no longer benefiting your hydration, but the first cup or 2 actually is fine for your hydration. But again, I'd rather you start the day with an electrolyte beverage before your coffee, just for that caffeine effect rather. But yeah, so that's really interesting, right? About how that is why you get bowel movements after coffee. It's more to be related to how it stimulates your metabolism through your brown fat and the thermic effect in general. The biggest thing that I want you to remember, guys, from today's chat, though, is that the dose determines if you're having medicine or poison, right? I've said it many times in this conversation. You just really need to be making sure that what amount of coffee you're having, as well as what you put in your coffee and your own relationship with coffee to your genetics, your lifestyle, that's how you're going to understand if it's helping or hurting you, because there's so much to be said about just doing the motions and drinking the things because it's always what you've always had, or you really like the sweet and creamy with the coffee and the caffeine jolt and all that stuff. That stuff compounds over time and it will cause health issues, and it could be just absolutely sabotaging, especially your hormones long term, if you continue to do that just for the creature comfort. You can always rewrite habits to create new creature comforts when you start to just shift that habit and try a new one, and it always helps for you to have a more, I almost want to say abundance mindset, but like you're changing that habit for a greater good. It's for a reason that you want to feel better. You want to be healthier. You want to look better, whatever it is. In focusing on what you're doing and gaining is more than just what you're losing. Because a lot of like my clients in the past will be like, oh, but I really miss my like creamy coffee with my sugar. And this whatever isn't as exciting. When you have that mentality around it, of course not. And unfortunately, yeah, when you have hyperpalatable foods, especially things that involve sugar and fat, yeah, they can be a lot more addicting and taste better in your mouth. But at the same time, at what expense, right? You have to just remember that trade-off. And the more you focus on the positives of what you're going to be doing and enjoying the process and building a new habitual routine for yourself, that's where you're going to really see success in your health. And it's going to be worth it. Trust me. All right, so I hope that I covered everything you and your questions or thoughts about this coffee conversation. And I probably honestly covered a little bit more extra in regards to how it relates to our hormones and our quality of life in general. But I hope that that was helpful for you and that you feel a little bit more empowered and educated for your long-term health journey. So share this episode to your Instagram or send it to your bestie who you think needs to hear it, who just slams coffee all day, who knows. But as always, celebrate your strength and nourishment, walk with confidence, and I will catch you next week on another episode of Rebel Wellness. Hey Rebel, I just want to say a huge thank you for tuning in and sharing this space with us. Before we sign off, I've got some exciting ways for you to stay connected and to take your wellness journey even further with me. First up, if you haven't already, make sure to swing by CoachKailes.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's your go-to source for the latest episodes, exclusive content, and a whole lot more wellness goodness delivered straight to your inbox. Check out the show notes for those high-quality tips on nutrition, fitness, and just overall well-being. Follow us on Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast and my flagship page at Kailes. We're all about building a community where we can share, inspire, and grow together. So I would love to see you there. Now, if you're looking to reset and realign after a vacation, a hectic work season, or just because you feel like it's time for a healthful cleanse, I've got something super special for you, and it's 100% free. Head over to stan.store/Kailes and download my free realignment detox guide. You can also find it at coachkale.com in the freebies section. I'm sharing my unique holistic approach to help you cut back inflammation, improve your skin, and even shed some excess weight with this guide. So trust me, you're gonna love it. Go download it for free now. But last but not certainly least, if you've got a burning health question you'd like answered on the show, or if you're curious about my one-on-one remote coaching or group courses, don't hesitate to visit my website and reach out to me there, or hello@kaylieloren.com is my best email for contacting me. I am here to support you on your journey to wellness, so do not feel afraid to reach out. All right, Rebel, catch you on the next episode.